Hello everyone. It's January 21st and I'm going to be talking about Genesis 4 today. It's Friday now, but had a great last weekend because my 49ers won. My husband's not too happy because Dallas lost, but may the best team win. So basically, um, Genesis 4 is about Cain and Abel. It's about Cain murdering Abel. So we know that Adam knew his wife, and in the sense that he knew her, that's the first specific mention of sex in the Bible. And to say that they knew each other is just a polite way to say sexual relations. Um, we don't know, we have no reason to believe that they had sex before this. They were certainly capable of it, but there's just nothing mentioned in it. So when they did know each other, Eve became pregnant and bore a son and named him Cain. And the name Cain means basically I've got him, or here he is. Parents always want what's good for their children. Obviously, if you have children, that's you know that. And so Adam and Eve thought that their children were destined for greatness, and especially Eve had those expectations for Cain, right? But it went further than our normal parental hopes and expectations. Adam and Eve actually thought Cain was to be the Messiah that God had promised. And so every time that Eve held Cain, she thought she was holding the Messiah in her hands, the Savior of the whole world. But she didn't know that she was actually holding the murderer of her son, her other son. So then Adam and Eve knew each other again sexually, and she bore another son and named him Abel. Abel was the keeper of the sheep, but Cain was the tiller of the ground. And when it came time to process things, Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord, but Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and their fat. So the Lord respected Abel's offering. He didn't respect Cain's because it wasn't the very best that he could have offered, and that made Cain angry. And he took it out on his brother. So how do we know that Cain and Abel knew what sacrifices was to be accepted or not accepted? Well, there's really no evidence of it, but it was obvious to them. So somewhere along the way that they were given that information. So when Cain's countenance fell, when he got angry, his anger was undoubtedly rooted in his pride. He couldn't bear that his brother was accepted before God and he wasn't. The epidemic of sin quickly became worse. Cain now committed the relatively sophisticated sins of spiritual pride and hypocrisy. This is in the this is written in the, sorry, that's my dog playing with her toy. This is information written in the Blue Letter Bible by David Gusick. And it just talks about that he committed pride and hypocrisy. So God confronted Cain, but he dealt with him in loving confrontation instead of an automatic affirmation. He didn't he wasn't angry with him. He tried to talk to him with love, and he made it clear that Cain would be accepted if he did well. And of course, God knew the answers to the questions he asked him about why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? But he wanted Cain to know and to resist the pull toward that violence and anger within himself. And we know that Cain didn't do that. God warned Cain about the destructive power of sin. Cain could have resisted the sin and found a blessing, or he could give into sin and be devoured. In order for us to prevent from sinning, we have to let God rule over us. He has to be our master. And without God as our master, we will always be slaves to sin, right? So in Genesis 4:8, Cain murders Abel. He talked with his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. And so Cain planned to catch Abel by surprise. He wanted to start off with a very pleasant conversation, and then he was going to murder him. So this clearly shows that Cain premeditated this murder and clearly ignored God's way of escape by turning away from sin and accepting the blessing. He didn't do that. No human had ever died or been killed before this time, but Cain saw how the animals were killed for sacrifice, and he killed Abel in the same. And God knew all of this, of course, and then he confronted Cain and asked, "Where's your brother?" And Cain says, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" I don't think I'd ever question God. I mean, I know that people do, but I don't think I would do it with the sarcasm that it sounds like Cain did. God knew the answer to the question. He asked Cain in order for him to have the opportunity to confess his sin and start to do right after having done wrong by murdering his brother. So how futile it was to lie to God. We all know that. He sees everything. And it was madness for him to think God didn't know where Abel was. Cain's reply is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" That's obviously a famous saying. The fact of the matter is that he was supposed to be his brother's keeper. But instead, he was his brother's murderer. And he murdered for the lowest of reasons. Because Abel hadn't done anything to Cain. Cain's murderous rage was because of his spiritual jealousy. In Jude 11, it warns of the way of Cain, which is unbelief, empty religion leading to jealousy, persecution of those truly godly, and murderous anger. And there's no greater curse on the earth than empty, vain religion, those who have a form of godliness but deny the power of God, as it says in 2 Timothy 3:5. So God tells Cain that the voice of your brother's blood cries out from the ground to him. And the blood of Jesus also speaks, but of better things, of grace, and of sin having been judged. The curse upon Cain was that Adam's curse would be amplified in regard to him. If bringing forth food from the earth would be hard for Adam, it would be impossible for Cain, who was a farmer. If Adam were driven from Eden, Cain would find no resting place on all the earth. Cain couldn't handle it. He says, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." Cain didn't feel bad about his sin, but only about his punishment. This attitude did not end with Cain. Like him, many people feel only bad about their punishment when they get caught and they're forced to answer to it. But a lot of people just aren't sorry for their sin. They're sorry they got caught. They're sorry they're punished. They're sorry that it's me. Everything's happening to me. One of the clearest marks of sin is our almost innate desire to excuse ourselves and complain if we are judged in any way. It's Bochi. So God said, "Whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." God did not want Cain killed by others. And this could be because of the population on the earth was low already, and having another male that was killed besides Abel could lessen the ability to populate the earth. So God set a mark on Cain, and it was a protective mark, and nobody really knows what the mark was, just that it was a mark. So Cain marries and moves away. And then it talks about him building a city, and it talks about the generations following Cain. Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech. When I came to the verses about Lamech, I was really confused because in the middle of it, Lamech, they're talking about the generations. Then in the middle of this, Lamech says to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. Well, it was just really odd in the middle of a generational context that this Lamech would come out and say this. So I didn't understand it. I had to look it up, and I'm looking in the Blue Letter Bible under David Gusick, and this is what he says. I have killed a man for wounding me. And this is what Lamech had told his wives. So David Gusick says, the way Lamech boasted about his murder of another, and the way he believed he could promise a greater retribution than God, shows a progressive degeneracy among humanity. Things quickly became worse with the human race, a true devolution. And then the part about if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. So this is all a representation of humanism, a man-centered perspective. The city was Cain's city. The focus of Lamech was his beautiful wives and his own perceived strength. But for all of Lamech's boasting, neither he nor his descendants are ever heard of again in the Bible. He came to nothing. So it really, now I don't know if this was just the second murder in the Bible or the second sin-based well, he did say he killed the man, so it's been hundreds of years, so I don't know that this is the second murder there is, but it is the second murder that's been spoken of in the Bible. And I guess that to me, it kind of proves that Cain's line is not getting any better. In fact, it's worse. Cain was sevenfold, and Lamech is now 77-fold. This section is still a little confusing to me, so maybe you have some ideas and you can tell me about them. But after this part, Adam and Eve knew each other again, had sexual relations, and they bore another son named Seth. Now, Adam and Eve probably had many children in between Cain and Abel and Seth, but Seth is worthy of mentioning because he replaced Abel. He replaced Abel, who was the one to whom the promise of a deliverer from the seed of the woman would be passed. So in the end, Genesis 4, the men began to call on the name of the Lord. Even in those wicked days, the worship of God was not unknown. Some have called Genesis 4:26 the first revival, because it was the first indication of a spiritual resurgence after a clear decline. So after Cain and everything, and Lamech, obviously, there was a decline. And we'll actually go into that, into the next chapter, where God is kind of getting more upset because of the sin that's evident in the world. And so this was a first revival that people were calling upon the Lord. Their spirits were uplifting again after all of this bad stuff with Cain had happened. So that's kind of a summary of chapter 4. Again, if you have any questions or if you want to dispute anything I say, please do. I'd love to talk with you about it. So I have a couple more things about archaeology, but I've already gone into this about 14-15 minutes, and it's about a general Genesis archaeology, so I'll talk about that probably next time. So thank you, and I'm working on chapter 5 writing, and I hope you are still following along. Thank you.